In the heart of rural Pennsylvania, nestled within the quiet community of Ross Township, lived Kellyanne Walls, a woman who defied convention and challenged the boundaries between the domestic and the wild. Kellyanne wasn't just a mother of two. She was the caretaker of a creature most people only glimpse from afar, a 350-pound black bear. Now, before you jump to conclusions about reckless endangerment, it's crucial to understand that this wasn't some impulsive decision made on a whim. Kellyanne had acquired the bear when it was just a cub. She had obtained the necessary permits from the state, navigating the legal labyrinth with diligence and care. This wasn't a secret hush-hush operation. It was a registered, permitted, and for years, seemingly safe coexistence. She dedicated her life to this animal, constructing a sturdy enclosure on her property and meticulously adhering to guidelines set forth by wildlife officials. But more than just compliance, Kellyanne poured her heart into this unlikely relationship. She saw in this bear not a terrifying predator, but a creature deserving of compassion and care. Imagine this: you're raising a wild animal, bottle feeding it as a cub, watching it grow from a playful bundle of fur into a powerful, imposing beast. You're cleaning its enclosure daily, preparing its meals, observing its every movement. A routine develops, a familiarity that blurs the lines between keeper and kept. It's easy to understand how a sense of profound trust could take root. Kellyanne wasn't a thrill seeker or someone who dismissed the inherent dangers of wild animals. On the contrary, those close to her describe her as exceptionally responsible and cautious. She understood the risks, but she genuinely believed that her love and dedication had forged an unbreakable bond with this bear. She named him ... Well, the name itself isn't really the point. What is the point is that this wasn't just some nameless beast confined to a cage. This was an animal Kellyanne treated with affection, spoke to with tenderness, and considered a member of her extended, unconventional family. Think about the sheer audacity of that trust. Every time she entered that enclosure, she was placing herself within striking distance of an animal capable of inflicting catastrophic injury. Every interaction was a calculated risk, a testament to her unwavering belief in the bond they shared. And, for years, that belief seemed justified. Neighbors often saw Kellyanne inside the enclosure, tending to the bear, sometimes even engaging in what appeared to be playful interactions. There were no visible signs of aggression, no warning signals that something sinister was brewing beneath the surface. This wasn't a scenario of neglect or abuse. The bear was well fed, its enclosure was clean, and Kellyanne invested considerable time and resources into its well-being. She truly believed she was providing this animal with a better life than it would have had in the wild, where it would face starvation, territorial disputes, and the constant threat of hunters. It's easy to criticize from the outside, to armchair quarterback her decisions with the benefit of hindsight, but try to put yourself in her shoes. Imagine the sense of accomplishment, the pride she must have felt in successfully coexisting with such a magnificent, yet potentially dangerous animal. Kellyanne wasn't just keeping a bear, she was building a relationship, forging a connection that transcended species. She was proving, at least in her own mind, that love and respect could overcome instinct and that humans and animals could live together in harmony, even under the most challenging circumstances. This is the crux of the story, the heart of the tragedy. It's the belief in that bond, the unwavering trust she placed in that animal, that makes what happened next so unbelievably shocking and heartbreaking. Because, despite all the precautions, despite all the love, despite all the years of seemingly peaceful coexistence, the wild is never truly tamed. And on one fateful Sunday morning, that harsh reality would come crashing down with devastating force. October 4th, 2009. A Sunday that began much like any other in Ross Township, Pennsylvania. The air was crisp, hinting at the full arrival of autumn. Leaves crunched underfoot, painted in shades of red and gold. Kellyanne Walls, a 37-year-old mother, started her day with the usual routine. A routine that, for many, would be considered anything but usual. She wasn't heading out for a leisurely brunch or a quiet morning at home. No, Kellyanne was preparing to enter the enclosure of a 350-pound black bear she had raised nearly since it was a cub. Imagine that for a moment. Stepping into a cage with an animal capable of inflicting unimaginable harm, an animal whose instincts were forever wired for the wild. But for Kellyanne, it was just another Sunday. Her 2 children, a daughter and a 12-year-old son, were playing nearby. Their laughter, carefree and innocent, echoed in the crisp morning air. They were accustomed to seeing their mother interact with the bear. To them, it was almost normal, a dangerous normal, a chillingly accepted part of their lives. Little did they know, this ordinary Sunday was about to descend into unimaginable horror. Around 9:10 a.m., Kellyanne approached the bear's enclosure. She carried a bucket filled with cleaning supplies and a sense of calm familiarity that bordered on unbelievable. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a ritual she had performed countless times. She unlocked the gate, the metallic clicker sound that likely faded into the background noise of their lives. She stepped inside. The bear, as always, was there. A hulking presence, a stark reminder of the raw power contained within the chain-link fence. Years of raising it, of feeding it, of caring for it, had lulled Kellyanne into a false sense of security. She genuinely believed that the bond they shared would protect her. A fatal misconception. For the next few minutes, she went about her chores, cleaning, tidying, perhaps even talking to the bear in a soothing voice. The children continued to play, their joy a stark contrast to the impending tragedy. The scene painted a picture of domesticity, twisted and warped by the presence of a wild animal. Then, without warning, everything changed. Around 9:20 a.m., the unimaginable happened. The bear, for reasons we can only speculate on, a sudden shift in mood, a perceived threat, the simple, undeniable pull of instinct, attacked. It was sudden, brutal, and shockingly swift. One moment Kellyanne was going about her routine. The next, she was fighting for her life. The bear, with its immense size and power, lunged at her, knocking her to the ground. The sheer force of the impact must have been devastating, instantly disorienting and overwhelming. Imagine the terror, the utter disbelief, as the creature she had trusted turned on her. The animal she believed was family was now her attacker. In those horrifying seconds, the years of perceived safety shattered into a million pieces. And then, the screams of her children, witnessing the unthinkable, their innocent laughter replaced by cries of pure, unadulterated terror. They watched, paralyzed by fear, as their mother was dragged to the ground, overpowered by the animal she had raised. A sight that would forever be etched into their memories. A trauma that would undoubtedly haunt them for the rest of their lives. Neighbors, hearing the commotion, rushed outside to investigate. One neighbor, in particular, heard the desperate cries and knew something was terribly wrong. Grabbing his rifle, he raced towards the enclosure, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew he had to do something, anything, to help. He arrived at the scene to a nightmare. Kellyanne was on the ground, the bear looming over her, its powerful jaws and claws inflicting horrific injuries. The scene was chaotic, a blur of fur and blood and desperate struggle. Every second mattered, without hesitation. Driven by a desperate need to save Kellyanne, the neighbor raised his rifle and fired. The deafening crack of the gunshot ripped through the morning air, momentarily silencing the screams. He fired again. The bear, startled and injured, finally released its grip on Kellyanne. It staggered back, momentarily stunned, but the damage had already been done. The neighbor had acted heroically, but it was too late. Kellyanne lay motionless on the ground, her body ravaged by the attack. The bear, mortally wounded, collapsed nearby. Silence descended upon the enclosure, broken only by the frantic sobs of the children. They rushed to their mother's side, their small hands reaching out to touch her, to wake her up from this horrific nightmare. But she didn't move. First responders arrived within minutes, sirens blaring, but there was nothing they could do. Kellyanne Walls was gone. Her children, traumatized beyond comprehension, had witnessed the most horrific event imaginable. They had watched their mother die, eaten alive by the very animal she had loved and trusted. A quiet Sunday morning in Ross Township had transformed into a scene of unimaginable tragedy, a stark reminder of the inherent dangers of keeping wild animals as pets, a chilling example of the devastating consequences of blurring the lines between domesticity and the untamed wilderness. The illusion of control shattered in an instant, leaving behind a legacy of grief and a haunting question: could this have been prevented? The aftermath in Ross Township was a blur of grief and disbelief. A quiet community, suddenly thrust into the national spotlight, struggled to comprehend the unthinkable. How could a woman, known for her love of animals, a woman who had raised a bear from a cub, meet such a horrifying end? The immediate shock gave way to a somber reckoning. The investigation, led by the Pennsylvania Game Commission, meticulously documented the scene. Photographs captured the blood-stained enclosure, the lifeless body of the bear, and the lingering sense of violation that hung heavy in the air. Investigators focused on the bear's history, its behavior leading up to the attack, and Kellyanne's interactions with the animal. They pored over records, permits, and interviewed neighbors, friends, and family, searching for any clue that might explain the tragedy. And what they found painted a picture of a woman who genuinely believed she had forged a unique bond with a wild animal. Kellyanne wasn't reckless, not in her own mind. She had obtained the necessary permits, provided what she believed was appropriate housing, and dedicated years to caring for the bear. But as the investigation deepened, a stark truth emerged. Permits and good intentions are no match for the immutable instincts of a predator. Wildlife experts, brought in to consult on the case, spoke with grim clarity. Black bears, one expert stated, are not domesticated animals. They are, at their core, wild. Their behavior is driven by instinct, and that instinct can override any sense of familiarity or affection. Another added, keeping a bear, even one raised from a cub, is like living with a loaded gun. Sooner or later, it's going to go off. The experts pointed to the inherent unpredictability of bears, their capacity for sudden aggression, particularly when feeling threatened, stressed, or simply asserting dominance. They emphasized that even subtle changes in the environment, or even in Kellyanne's own behavior, could have triggered the fatal attack. Perhaps the bear was feeling territorial. Perhaps it was experiencing pain or discomfort that Kellyanne didn't recognize. Whatever the trigger, the outcome was devastating. The tragedy sparked a wave of soul-searching across the nation. Similar incidents, though perhaps not as graphically tragic, were brought back to light. There was the case of the Connecticut woman mauled by a chimpanzee, the numerous escapes of big cats from private compounds in Florida, and countless other instances where the line between wild animal and pet blurred with disastrous consequences. These incidents highlighted a disturbing trend: the growing popularity of exotic animal ownership, fueled by a combination of fascination, misguided compassion, and, in some cases, a desire for status or notoriety. But the experts warned that these animals are not status symbols. They are complex, powerful creatures with needs and instincts that cannot be met in a domestic setting. The debate quickly escalated, dividing communities and pitting animal rights advocates against exotic animal owners. On one side were those who argued that the private ownership of dangerous wild animals should be banned outright. They pointed to the inherent risks to public safety, the potential for animal suffering, and the ethical concerns surrounding keeping wild creatures confined in artificial environments. These animals belong in the wild, argued one animal rights activist. They are not meant to be pets. Keeping them in cages, depriving them of their natural habitat and social structures, is cruel and inhumane, and it puts everyone around them at risk. On the other side were those who defended the right to own exotic animals, arguing that responsible owners could provide adequate care and ensure public safety. They emphasized the importance of education, regulation, and strict enforcement of existing laws. They also accused animal rights activists of exaggerating the risks and infringing on personal freedoms. Responsible exotic animal ownership is not the problem, countered one exotic animal breeder. The problem is irresponsible owners who neglect their animals or fail to take proper precautions. We need to focus on educating people about the proper care of these animals and enforcing the laws that are already in place. The legal landscape surrounding exotic animal ownership is a patchwork of state and local laws, varying widely in scope and effectiveness. Some states have outright bans on the possession of certain species, while others have more lenient regulations, requiring permits, inspections, and insurance. But even in states with stricter laws, enforcement can be challenging, leaving loopholes that unscrupulous owners can exploit. In Pennsylvania, Kellyanne Walls had obtained the necessary permits to keep her bear, but those permits did little to protect her from the animal's inherent wildness. Her death exposed the inadequacy of the state's existing regulations and fueled calls for reform. Lawmakers faced mounting pressure to strengthen the laws governing exotic animal ownership, balancing the rights of individuals with the need to protect public safety and animal welfare. Beyond the legal and regulatory debates, the tragedy of Kellyanne Walls raised profound ethical questions about our relationship with the natural world. Are we justified in keeping wild animals as pets, even if we believe we can provide them with adequate care? Do we have the right to confine these creatures, depriving them of their freedom and natural behaviors, simply for our own amusement or companionship? The answers to these questions are complex and multifaceted, but one thing is clear: the private ownership of wild animals is not a risk-free endeavor. It carries inherent dangers, both for the animals themselves and for the people who live around them. And as the tragedy in Ross Township starkly illustrated, good intentions and personal bonds are no substitute for respecting the power and unpredictability of the wild. Kellyanne Walls' story serves as a somber reminder that some lines should not be crossed, that some creatures are best left to their own devices, living free in their natural habitats. It is a lesson etched in sorrow, a cautionary tale for all who believe they can tame the wild.